Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapia. With me today is Derek Brown, D-Bro, the king of bros, and a special guest from Sirius XM, one of my favorite people from the Fantasy Channel ever. He's also the owner, managing editor, undisputed champion of the world at Fantasy Points, Joe Dolan, back with us again. Joe, it is good to see you, my friend. You are my companion on Sundays. If I ever have to get in the car, immediately for a decade now, that's where I go. You and I worked together for a while there at the station, and still to this day, if I am in that car and I hear Joe Dolan on, I am a happy man.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's kind of like what people say now. I think the real sickos, Pia, are the ones who actually sit down and listen to the entire 6-hour thing and they mute the television. There are people who do that, apparently. But like, the one I do like to hear is like, it's Sunday, right? Like, while going back and watching football, and that's sitting on the couch and having a couple beers, but sometimes if you got a family, you got a home to take care of, you got a pet to take care of, you got to do stuff, right?
Right.
Sometimes the wife is like, or the kids are like, let's go to the park or something. Hey, if I can help you through that, keep you informed, see how your teams are doing, I think that's the purpose of the show. And you know what kind of differs it from what they do on NFL radio is, we're not always focused on game day on the closest games, right?
Right.
We're not like, maybe there's a 17-14 game that's coming down to the wire, and NFL radio is going to throw to that game. Well, the 45-10 game is just as important for us. So, we're going to keep you updated on those games that have all the scoring. So no, I love doing the game day show. I presume it's going to be back this year, but hey, this would be year 13 of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be at least 10, man. It's got to be at least
year
10.
13. 2010 was the first year. 2011 was the first year of the 6-hour program. So this would be year 13. You
and Matt do a tremendous job there. It's always fun to hang out with you guys.
Paul Kelly now, by the way.
And Paul, right, and Paul the last year. Yeah, of course. Paul,
so freaking awesome. Like, when Matt moved on, like, Paul stepped right into the role. Like,
he was great last year, too.
He's just the man. He's the man.
I'll tell you, when I do those Sunday Chinese food runs, that's boom right there. I was like, I can't miss anything, so I got to put all my boys there and listen to it. And Derek Brown, speaking of things I can't go without, I don't think I've done a show with you since I've been back from vacation. Have I? I don't know. Everything's starting to blur together for me.
I think that's remnants of butterbeer.
Is that what it is?
I think so. We've had one in the chamber there, Joe.
Oh, you know what? We did do the one, but I'm still hungover from all the butter beer, which I did send you pictures of while I was away. Here's my dream, D-Bro. I want to go, you and me, no kids, just you and me in Harry Potter world on Hagrid together. I'll ride in the sidecar. You can ride the motorcycle part on that ride. What do you say?
Oh, I'm in like Flint. Okay. Sign me up, dude. I've only been once and it's been a long time. So I think they got more rides and attractions since the last time I was there, but it's hopping off of Harry Potter, and I know that's kind of hard for me to do because I just my fandom, my nerddom loves it. Shout out to Paul Kelly real fast. That man gave me my first ever guest spot on Sirius Radio just by random DMs. So a lot of love for that dude. I didn't want that to go not said on this show.
The nicest man on Fantasy Sports Radio.
Yes.
Like I even had him on my my wressling podcast. He's even come on in general. It's like
Paul and I. And he's well rounded first and foremost. Like the greatest concert I've been. So by the way, y'all, if you don't know, Paul Kelly is a co-host on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. You'll often hear him with John Hansen in the morning.
Right.
He does the game day show with me, and he will occasionally do other spots too, with Kaplan and whatnot. He also is a radio pro at a music station in New Jersey. The greatest concert experience of my life was my birthday week in 2018. My wife and I, she came, I saw, by the way, 2 Hold Steady concerts in Philadelphia, and you can see my posters back there. So I'm a Hold Steady obsessed man. But my wife and I, our first dance at our wedding was to the Smashing Pumpkins. It was to Tonight Tonight.
Great tune.
And Paul, the Smashing Pumpkins were in town in Philadelphia. And I just reached out to Paul. Hey, Paul, Do you have any tickets? 8th row, dead center.
Wow.
For Dolan and his wife. So great concert it was, but just the nicest guy. He doesn't have a huge social media presence, but Paul Kelly is the nicest. Well, there's a lot of nice guys in the fantasy industry. The two nicest, I would say, are Paul Kelly and Bob Harris. Like among people
that I good.
Love Bob.
Yeah, I would throw Fitz of our own here, Fantasy Pros, into that category.
Agreed.
Fitz is just
Fitz. I'm actually doing Fitz's podcast is one of the podcasts I had to push back because I had COVID voice.
Well, let's get the most out of your COVID voice. Let's get to the football today. We're going to get into it here, and today, it's all about the rankings, what's right and what's wrong. Derek Brown has taken a very long look. So is Joe Dolan, to get a sense of what's going on here, where things are a little off in terms of their rankings versus the consensus ranks. And of course, you can see all of those at fantasypros.com/rankings. Duh, that's where they live. But not just that. What also lives there is our fantasy football draft kit right now at fantasypros.com/kit. And it's free. It's free for you. We're just giving it away. We've got the rankings from all of our major analysts. We got the ADP, the player profiles, the position primers, all sorts of incredible strategy pieces, draft guide pieces, everything there to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. And if you're a premium subscriber, you get even more. So we're trying to push everybody to understand, hey, look, we're giving you the draft kit, but if you want the extra special sauce, then come be a premium member of Fantasy Pros, because I'm telling you, it pays for itself. And speaking of paying for itself, if you're not currently a premium member and you want to get the draft kit and you want to get my playbook to manage all your teams and all that fun stuff, we've got a deal for you. So I'm going to give it away for you. 12 free months of access to our premium features and content. And all you got to do is go to fantasypros.com/offers. Okay. fantasypros.com/offers. You go there, you make a deposit into one of our partner sites there. That's all you got to do. And then you get 12 free months. That's it. A whole year. You get the draft kit. You get the stuff to manage your team in season. You get the upgraded draft wizard. You get all sorts of incredible bells and whistles and more over at fantasypros.com/offers. So get that. Then go to fantasypros.com/draft kit. Get that. And then you're set. You're good to go. Now, let's get to the football. Let's start here on the negative side, because that's always more fun. We look at players that are ranked too high, players we think that might be a little bit more, above board right now in terms of where we want to make investments in. So, Joe, you are the guest. Give me the first player off the board, in your opinion, that you think is kind of fitting that bill, where you see the ECR, you see the consensus ranking, and you go, you know what? It's just too rich for my blood.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at ECR, and I'm also basing a lot of this, guys, off of like best ball drafts that I've done. So like I'm also factoring in mentally some ADPs that I think are ridiculous here. And I got to tell you one, and I think JuJu Smith-Schuster is ridiculous to me.
Okay.
And let me throw this out there too. Yes, I understand he has a 100+ catch season. He's going to play with Patrick Mahomes. I understand that the situation has upgraded for him, but I'm thinking through this from a logical perspective. First off, he caught 17 passes last year because he dealt with more injuries. He got the shoulder and he's had the knees, but I'm looking at this from trying to look at this from a logical perspective, right? JuJu Smith-Schuster has entered each of the last 2 off seasons as maybe the youngest unrestricted free agent wide receiver on the market who has any sort of track record whatsoever. And he's had to settle for a low-end 1-year deal in each of those 2 years. Now, I know you're going to, there's always the reports, well, he turned down a multi-year deal from here to go back to Pittsburgh, and he turned down a multi-year deal here to go play in Kansas City. But back-to-back years, when it was looking like 2 years ago, he was going to be utterly able to cash in at such a high level because of his history of production. It just feels like he has a much higher reputation in fantasy football circles than he does in actual NFL football circles.
Well, and you make the point too, Joe. I mean, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and it's a huge fan base. And when you have success for a huge fan base, you tend to last a little bit longer sometimes. You get a longer leash around those points. And I agree with you. I think that competition is wide open there with the Kansas City Chiefs. It could be JuJu, could be MVS, could be Sky Moore, it could be, I hate to think it's Sammy Watkins, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. It could just be an amalgamation of everybody.
It would be really strange if it was Sammy Watkins, because he's in Green Bay.
Oh, that's not Sammy Watkins. Sorry. I keep forgetting him that he's moved on there. That's my bad. This is what happens. No, don't worry about it. Baseball brain. This is what happens when you go from show to show, back to back like this.
You had COVID too, right?
No, I'm just sick. So
I was about to say, you have a built-in excuse.
I didn't have it in January. But no,
Every
I
dumb thing I
apologize for
do
that. It's
is
not
COVID brain.
It's not going to be Sammy Watkins. My apologies there. That's my bad. But look, Derek Brown, I know you've got some names there too. Who is top of your list right now that you think is just overvalued and overranked?
Well, first of all, I love the fact that Dolan's here because then I'm not labeled the JuJu Smith-Schuster hater on this show constantly. So I'm not alone here. So I love that call.
I did not know that coming in. We did not. This was not a plot.
We didn't compare notes. No,
we did not compare notes.
So I love that call out first. But the first player that I got to bring up here is David Montgomery. I can't wrap my head around how he's still a top 20 running back in ECR, RB16. And I say this like I understand that he's been RB12 and RB6 over the last 2 seasons, but this is also with Montgomery just locking in a top 5 opportunity share in those seasons. Now with Luke Getsy in town, new regime, new offensive system, I don't think that's going to happen in 2022. And the other part about this is if his snap share drops, guys, he hasn't been efficient enough where I think he can make up for that. You're looking at a player who has been 42nd, 25th, and 36th in yards created per touch over the last 3 seasons. So I don't think that he's good enough in the receiving game to run the routes and stuff. I think Tristan Ebner is a player that I've been talking about on social media, and I get he's a 6th-round pick, but he is hands down the best receiving back. So I look at it, David Montgomery can lose a lot of work in this backfield, both to Khalil Herbert, Darrington Evans are both really good backs for this outside zone scheme, and Ebner is a stud in the passing game. So count me out on Montgomery, especially at a price tag of top 20 RB. Can't do it.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. And going back to the ranking of JuJu Smith-Schuster, he's ranked at wide receiver 32. Joe, before I ask you about your next guy, 32 is way too rich for your blood. Where would you put him instead?
We have him at wide receiver 58 at fantasypoints.com.
It's a big difference there.
I mean, honestly, and look, I understand why people are like, this is Mahomes. You know, they were actually, and I just did an interview with Seth Kaiser, who does a lot of film analysis for the Chiefs. And, you know, last year, this was a restricted offense. There was not a whole lot of verticality to the Chiefs offense. So if that continues, Juju's going to get a lot of those targets. But this is one of the most extreme flag plantings I can remember in my rankings versus the markets. Because normally, you know, there's a lot of smart people in this industry, right? Like, and
I'm with you.
Yeah, totally, and maybe I'm not one of them, but like, this is literally one of the most extreme flag plantings I can remember.
And speaking of planting flags, I got to plant one in my brain because I don't know why my brain said what my mouth wanted to say Sammy Watkins. My brain should have said Mecole Hardman, but it's been that kind of day. I think for all of us, it's Friday. It's been a long day.
They're kind of like the same guy anyway. Like the football always gets constantly pulled away from you with both of them. So
all right, let's get another name from you. Joe Dolan, give me another name on your list right now that is ranked too high in your opinion.
Nick Chubb. I love the player. This one always hurts for me to say because Nick Chubb, I think pound for pound, you always get those 2 or 3 games a year where you're like, this guy's the best running back in pro football. Like the explosive plays, the goal line work, the elusiveness, like it's all there. And then Kareem Hunt is just there to ruin your day, constantly getting all the passing down work. And the thing about Hunt is he's a good player too, a really good one. And look, the Deshaun Watson suspension could come down at any point. I actually think when that does happen, if and when that does happen, they're going to be a run-first team. But look, a team with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback is not going to be very good. Kareem Hunt's still going to be the passing down back. It's rough for me spending a 2nd-round pick on Nick Chubb because there's always the 3 or 4 games a year where you're like, man, that's a damn good football player. And then there's the other ones where he has 18 carries for 93 yards. And you're like, oh, great game, but he doesn't catch a pass. He doesn't score a touchdown. And even though he played really well, he doesn't come through for you. Just there's so many receivers that I'm willing to take in that range. I'm willing to take Aaron Jones in that range, you know, like other running backs who I think have more upside in the passing game.
Real quick, give me the answer to this question. If you knew Watson was playing the entire season and what he can do to elevate an offense and the scoring opportunities of that offense, would that make you feel better about this rank of RB9?
Probably a little bit, because I would think the touchdowns go up, but you also know Cleveland's going to throw the ball more with Watson in there. And does that mean Kareem Hunt gets more work? Like, that's the little bit of the dichotomy going, but I would feel better just because I think the offense would be better, ergo more touchdown opportunities. And that's where Nick Chubb makes his hay.
All right, Derek Brown, back to you. Give me another name of a player that's ranked too high in your opinion.
Well, I'm going to stay on the Cleveland shade. I can't get behind Amari Cooper being ranked as wide receiver 22. That's absolute crazy sauce to me. You want to drop him into the wide receiver 3 category? I understand it. But wide receiver 22 is absolutely too pricey. Dolan talked about the concerns about Cleveland's offense with Jacoby Brissett. That spills over to the passing game. This offense goes into being a run-first offense, and Amari Cooper should drop like a stone in rankings. Now, also, this has to be said that Cooper has been a wide receiver with declining efficiency. His yards per route run have dropped over the last 3 seasons. And you marry this with what is going to be a slower offense, and the fact that with better quarterback play with Dak Prescott, he couldn't even muster a top 24 season last year, guys. He was wide receiver 25. But this year, we want to rank him higher? I don't understand it at all.
I'm gonna ask an inverted question. If you knew, let's say, when the Watson suspension potentially comes down, what happens to this ranking? How far does it drop in your opinion?
I mean, I've already kind of accounted for it a little bit in my rankings.
Like, I know you have, but I don't think the consensus has yet. I think consensus we're pretty clear on that. Right.
At all. I think that he is a mid to low wide receiver 3 just based off of volume and nothing more to me. And even if we were to say Watson is in the mix for it, I still can't get him into the wide receiver 2 territory. There's still too many other talented wide receivers that are in better projected offenses, better pace, and all the other parts and pieces that we love for fantasy. So even with Watson, if I were to throw him in there, we know he's not going to play the full season. Hell, we don't even know if he's going to play this season. But even if I equated him to a full season, I couldn't even put him in top 24.
All right, fair enough. Let's go back to you, Joe Dolan. Give me another name on your list of players that are ranked too high right now for your blood.
Yeah, so let's go to Damien Harris. And this is one where I'm going to plant a flag because of an interview I've done this season. And I've heard it from multiple Patriot beat writers who are just super high on Ramondre Stevenson's ability. As a matter of fact, I interviewed Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald, who told me he expects Ramondre Stevenson to take over lead back duties, whatever that means in the Patriots, by mid-season. He's better in the passing game. Now, Damien Harris, we know he was a great value last year. I had him everywhere. Ramondre Stevenson was better in the passing game than I had anticipated. Damien Harris is in the final year of his contract. Now, what have the Patriots historically done under Bill Belichick? Use those running backs until the final year of their contract, and they've been kind of churning guys through the door. You know, Kevin Falk becomes Shane Vereen, who becomes James White. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis becomes Stephen Ridley, who becomes Damien Harris. Like, they've constantly becomes LeGarrette Blount, becomes Damien Harris. You know, they've constantly done things like that. Well, what did they do this offseason? They brought back James White on a 1-year deal, but they can essentially cut him if it doesn't work out. They drafted Pierre Strong. They drafted Kevin Harris. They are setting up for Damien Harris to walk in free agency. Ramondre Stevenson bridges the gap between the early down work and the passing down work. The guy I'm targeting in that backfield is Ramondre Stevenson, not Damien Harris. I like Stevenson much better at cost. Even though, do I think Harris can fall into the end zone 10 times? Yes, I do. But I do feel like Ramondre Stevenson is the better pick at cost. I'd much rather wait on him.
Okay, so better pick at cost, but is this one of the backfields where, because of everything you said, which, I mean, anyone who's listened to the show in the last month has heard me say the same things about Damien Harris all the time in these mock drafts. I'm always very happy to get him because I feel like, hey, this is the last year where they're going to use the heck out of him and then move on. Is it worth, in that case, taking Harris and Stevenson in the off chance that there is, you know, an injury? And I know handcuffs are dicey and all that stuff, but is this one of the few backfields where it might be more beneficial to actually have both guys on one roster?
I don't typically do that in best ball drafts, especially when the ADP is this tight. But I could see that potentially being the case at some point. I just think Stevenson, to me, looked like the more versatile back. And based on all the work that I've done this offseason, just talking to beat writers, listening, doing the reading, Ramondre Stevenson is consistently being picked as a breakout player for the New England Patriots.
I like that. All right, let's go to another one on your list. Who you got next for us, Derek Brown, that's ranked a little too high?
So this is... this is not me throwing shade. I don't hate the player, but Aaron Jones at RB10, I can't get there. I have him an RB17, so I'm not saying he's dust. I'm not saying we need to put him out to pasture. But if you look at how A.J. Dillon was used down the stretch, and I get that Aaron Jones was a little bit banged up, but we can't definitively say that A.J. Dillon is not going to play even more of a role in this backfield or reprise the role that he did down the stretch last year, weeks 14 through 17. Aaron Jones ran only 22 more routes. He had 10 more targets, but A.J. Dillon gobbled up, just dominated the red zone work. And inside of a Packers offense, we want those money touches inside the 20. Like, A.J. Dillon had 13 red zone opportunities to Aaron Jones 3. So, well, everybody is on the Aaron Jones train talking about, the splits with no Devontae Adams and the target share. He's not going to be a player who's going to get a 20 or 25% target share. So it's not like he hasn't been involved in the passing game in previous seasons. If that doesn't help out or pad his stats to equate for any lost touchdown equity from A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones is going to have a tough time paying off at RB10 when last year he was only RB11 in fantasy points per game.
Now, look, everything you've said is right about A.J. Dillon and where things are going. You know how I feel about A.J. Dillon. Joe.
Oh, I know you love
A.J.
A.J. Dillon, Joe.
But Joe, you mentioned Aaron Jones being one of those players you really like at his ADP. So let's push back here. Let's have some fun. He thinks he's too high. Why do you think he's appropriate?
So the Packers are one of those teams where I actually like both of their running backs at their current cost.
That's fair.
And I think it goes to the Aaron Rodgers trust factor. I mean, who on this roster?
Sammy Watkins.
Yeah. Right.
Bing, bing.
Who on this roster?
See, we've come full circle. See, sometimes it's worth making a stupid mistake if you can pick it up at the end with a joke. There you go.
On this roster, who does Aaron Rodgers actually have legitimate actual chemistry with at the receiver position? Allen Lazard. I'm actually in on Allen Lazard at
Me
cost,
too.
guys. But he's never had more than like 40 catches in a season. The most experienced guy with Aaron Rodgers here is Randall Cobb, and they have to pull him out of a sarcophagus before every practice. So I look at Aaron Jones and his ability in the passing game, and actually this extends to A.J. Dillon as well, who showed us last year that he was a better receiver than people had thought. I look at him as being a key ingredient in their passing game. Maybe both of those guys get on the field at the same time, and I do still expect with Rodgers, with LaFleur, I expect this offense to be very good. So I think Aaron Jones at his current cost, his receiving ability, I know A.J. Dillon dominated a lot of the red zone work last year, but Aaron Jones has been historically great at the goal line. I'm in on both of those guys at cost, and I think Aaron Jones is going to be better in the passing game.
All right, fair enough. Joe, let's go back to your list of guys ranked too high. Who's next on it?
No, this one's not going to surprise anyone, and it's certainly not going to be a hot take, but Antonio Gibson. And guys, look, remember last year, all the hype, we think Ron Rivera, we think we can beat Christian McCaffrey, and it was easy to buy into that because he was a college wide receiver who had converted to running back. He flashed brilliantly in his rookie season after essentially learning a new position. And then I'm not sure he really took the step forward with the instincts that are required to play the running back position that they think. Two things happened big time this offseason, because there was the fleeting moment you guys might remember during legal tampering when J.D. McKissic had signed with Buffalo. And we're like, Gibson to the moon, baby. And then Washington convinced him to come back. I don't know. You want to talk about Stockholm syndrome. But he felt bad about leaving Washington for Buffalo. Like, what the hell, man? And then, of course, the drafting of Brian Robinson. 6 fumbles for Antonio Gibson last year was not a problem for Brian Robinson in college. Gibson in his career averages 2.5 fewer fantasy points per game when McKissic plays versus when McKissic is out. And he averages 3.1 fewer fantasy points per game in losses versus wins. Now, I think you can make the argument Carson Wentz is an upgrade on Taylor Heineke. The fact that that's an argument, though, I think it's probably likely, but the fact that that's an argument is a concern for me. I mean, look at what Baker Mayfield just fetched in a trade vis-a-vis what Carson Wentz got in a trade, and I'd rather have Baker 5 times out of 5. But that, with the fact that he's essentially become an early down grinder, and they drafted an early down grinder in Brian Robinson. Right. I think Antonio Gibson, the markets are collapsing on him. I'm not sure they've collapsed enough in the ECR.
And right now that ECR is at RB19, in case you were wondering out there. Not enough for you. And the Robinson one to me is more important even than McKissick, because if he goes to this old Carolina system pre-McCaffrey of the Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams days, that's a whole other thing where everybody's capped to a certain degree. And it's great for the football team, but it's not good for fantasy purposes. D-Bro, let's go back to your list. Give me another guy that you think is ranked too high right now.
Well, Joe, I gave A.J. Dillon some love. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to shade one of your players that I know you love a whole lot. I actually shipped him to you in Dynasty, so hooray for me. Pat Freiermuth. I don't understand why he's being ranked as high as he is. I mean, he's my tight end 18, and people might think that's spicy, but
18?
I don't see the absolutes. Yeah, man. Like, I don't see the ceiling for him. And hold on, let me lay this out before you.
All right, go ahead. All right.
Just hold on. The Steelers' offense is going to take a step back massively in passing rate. I mean, we saw last year with Ben Roethlisberger, they were 9th in neutral script passing rates. I don't see that happening. Whether it's Trubisky or Pickett under center, I think this Pittsburgh offense is going to go back to what we saw our early career Ben, and they're going to run the ball a ton. So all of the pass catchers in this offense, I'm worried about their volume. But the other thing that we need to talk about here is Freiermuth was number 1 amongst all tight ends and red zone targets. That is going to be incredibly hard to repeat. Now, yes, maybe that's part of Matt Canada's system, but still, that type of volume in the red zone is going to be really hard to duplicate. And you either look at the other parts or pieces. If he loses the volume, a little bit of red zone usage, and this offense is more run heavy, he was 19th in expected fantasy points, 25th in yards per route run. It's just a player that I think he lived off of touchdowns last year. I get he was a top 10 guy down the stretch, but I don't see that replicating in 2022.
That's fair. I think he's right around the fringe of tight end 1. That I agree with, which is where he's being ranked. So I actually think he's appropriate. Dynasty is a little different. I just like the player. I like the college career. I like what he has to offer long term, and I hope he can grow along with Kenny Pickett at some point in time. But 18, man, ouch. That really hurt. I'm going to have to recover from that one. Joe, while he's doing that, give me the last guy on your list that's ranked too high while I try to come back here mentally from that one.
Not even, again, not something that I think is going to shock a lot of people, but Michael Thomas. You want to talk about a guy I have no idea where to rank, but we're going to be entering 2022, nearly 3 calendar years removed from his last regular season touchdown.
Wow.
3. His last regular season touchdown was scored on December 22nd, 2019. Dwayne Haskins started a game that week. Here were the players of the week that week in the AFC and the NFC. The offensive player of the week in the AFC was Ryan Fitzpatrick. The NFC offensive player of the week is somebody we'll talk about in a little bit, Saquon Barkley. So these are some of the names of the players. Philip Lindsay ran for 109 yards and a touchdown that week. Kenyon Drake ran for 166 and 2 touchdowns with the Cardinals. Like 3 years ago is an eternity in the NFL. And maybe somebody's going to throw that back in my face when I talk about Saquon Barkley later. But when I looked at the video of Michael Thomas running routes, and I mean,
well, that was my question for you too. You're talking all the beat writers, right? You're always plugged into everybody. I know that about you. What are they saying about Michael Thomas? Because I feel like this is the one guy where we need the most news about, and I feel like we're getting the least amount of information, and I'm very frustrated.
I talked to Ross Jackson, who hosts the Locked On Saints podcast, and here is what he said about Michael Thomas. Well, and I'm not poking fun at Ross, but he's like, well, we don't need Michael Thomas to be record-setting Michael Thomas. What if he's rookie Michael Thomas? And well, I mean, rookie Michael Thomas was really freaking good. He caught 92 passes for 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. But I mean, what is the chances that he does that now? I mean, this is a guy whose last touchdown came from Drew Brees, who has not played in over a season. So by the way, Michael Thomas, to be fair to Michael Thomas, he did score a touchdown during the 2020 playoffs, even though he didn't during the regular season. But to me, it's just a really hard player for me to evaluate.
Right.
It's a tough team for me to evaluate, frankly, given the uncertainty with Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, and a wide receiver right now, 28 in ECR and the half PPR. I think it's indicative. I think everyone's kind of confused what to do. It's like you don't want to drop him too far because you don't want to look stupid if he goes off and has a great season, but you want to discount him enough. I mean, wide receiver 28, maybe that's not even enough at this point. All right, give me the last name on your list, Derek Brown, who you got that's ranked too high right now in your opinion.
I talked about him last year. I'm going to talk about him again. Robert Woods, I'm just not in on. And this is not shade. I love the player, but you were looking at a player that was before the ACL entering the conversation was declining in his efficiency. I mean, he was 36th last year before he went out with the ACL in yards per route run. Before that, he's a player who we had seen his yards per route run drop in each of the last 4 seasons. Now everybody wants to say, okay, well, who else in Tennessee is going to catch passes? Treylon Burks is apparently not doing great in camp. I'm concerned about this offense overall. I think this offense is just right on the edge of tipping over, and it could be very bad this season. So a player that we saw declining efficiency on a run-first offense that was 28th in neutral passing rate last year. I can't buy into it. I just can't.
Are you investing in Treylon Burks just out of curiosity, or just staying away from all the receivers on that team?
I'll take my shots on Treylon Burks and best ball just based off the upside. It's basically like I'm lower on Henry. I'll go Treylon Burks, or I'll go last pick in best ball of Austin Hooper. Outside of that, I'm more just out on this offense.
Fair enough. All right, so that's all the negativity. We got that out of the way. Let's flip the script now. Let's take a look at the players we think are actually not valued enough, the guys who are ranked too low. And Derek Brown, why don't we start with you this time? Give me a player that you think is ranked too low in the ECR that you think is not getting enough respect. Let's put some respect on his name.
Will people please join me in the love fest for Russell Gage? Please.
Oh,
please join me. I don't understand it. He's wide receiver 44 in ECR right now. I have him as wide receiver 26, and I don't understand why anybody thinks that's a hot take. Because we have a perfect system for Russell Gage to go off this year. You have AB and Gronk gone. Godwin is a question mark. And Russell Gage showed us last year he's an efficient player. He was 17th in yards per route run, 11th in yards per route run against man coverage. He could play on the outside and inside. And he's being airdropped into a team that's going to be top 10 in scoring, passing rate, pace, all these different things. And yet people are like, I can't get behind Russell Gage as a top 30 wide receiver. And the only thing I have to say is, why? Why?
It's a good question. I think because of the inverse of what we talked about earlier, where teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? You do well in the Steelers, you get a lot of love. You play on a team like the Falcons. The Falcons haven't been very good. There's a negativity that surrounds them, even though there were times and many moments over the last couple of years where Russell Gage had some good moments in fantasy, and he had some good ones last year too. Unfortunately, nothing could help the Falcons offense or their offensive line last year. Joe Dolan, let's go to one of the names on your list. Who's somebody that's ranked too low in your opinion right now?
Yeah, let's get it out of the way because I had already mentioned him. But
you teased it. You teased it. Do it.
Saquon Barkley, and as many smart people have noticed, we posted our franchise focus articles at Fantasy Points, and we're posting them in reverse alphabetical order. So we posted the Giants last week, and there was a comment that I had made in there that you can buy the dip on Barkley, and there was a lot of responses to the article like, well, that time has come and passed. So it starts to feel like people are warming up on this, but I think the Giants, who had just nuclearly bad vibes last year, and that was before the season, before Saquon, he suffered the fluke injury, but we knew Joe Judge was an idiot. We knew they were not going to be in any place to have success. I think it's the opposite this year. I think you bring in Brian Dable, you improve that offensive line. They're going to have 4 new starters along the offensive line, so it might take time for that to gel, but they're going to have 4 new starters effectively. And the reports that Saquon Barkley is just in unbelievable spirits. They're using him in the pass game. Look, I went to Penn State. I've watched Saquon Barkley his entire career. I'm from the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, where he went to high school. So I've seen Saquon Barkley his entire football life. The one thing Saquon Barkley was not, never will be, is an inside grinder. You want to make Saquon Barkley look like the worst version of himself when he's not hurt, is trying to run him constantly between the tackles like he's Derrick Henry. It's not going to work. Saquon Barkley is a space player. He's still dangerous in space. They want to use him more in the passing game. Look, Dable comes from Buffalo. What did Buffalo try to do? They tried to sign J.D. McKissick this offseason. Buffalo then went out and drafted James Cook. So you know they wanted to get a passing down back in Buffalo. I just think Saquon Barkley's role in the passing game is going to take some strain off of those really inefficient between the tackle touches behind what was a horrible offensive line last year. The line's going to be better. The offense is going to be better. The offense is going to be more creative. Hopefully Barkley's healthy. I think Saquon Barkley, I am buying him in the second round if I need a running back. If you don't want to take that risk, fine with me. But I think Saquon Barkley, I think this is a year he bounces back and shows us a little bit of what he used to be.
He's RB14 right now. So how confident are you in terms of draft stock? How high would you go with Saquon?
I would
what?
Put him around RB10.
Okay, RB10. Let's go to another player on Derek Brown's list. Who's ranked too low in your opinion, D-Bro?
I mean, I'm just going to sit here and just piggyback on Dolan. This is the only player that made both of our lists here. And I'm going to sit here and double down on the love here. He's RB6 for me. I'm all in on Saquon. All in. All of the things are lining up for Saquon. All of the reasons that Dolan mentioned, as well as the fact that he's never played behind a good offensive line, legitimately, in his entire career. And this O-line is going to be top 10, top 12 in run blocking this year. They've added Mark Lewinsky and Joe Feliciano, who have been awesome at zone run blocking if you look at PFF grades over the last 2 seasons, and Evan Neal. I'm all in on Saquon, so I'm going to double down on the love. I want people to keep bumping him up boards because I still think that he's still not ranked high enough. So yeah, he's inside my top 10.
All right, so a lot of love for Saquon Barkley
I almost
today.
Put Russell Gage on my list, by the way.
Oh,
so
there you go.
There you go.
Well, you guys can get a room after the show. All right, let's go to the next one. Joe Dolan, who's next on your list here for players that are ranked too low?
Rashod Bateman, and this one. Look, I understand Baltimore seems to be deciding they need to regress strategically to what was working when Lamar Jackson won the MVP back in 2019. I think over the last 2 years, they tried to expand the pass game. And then in 2020, you had, the COVID year really affected our ability to do that. Okay. So they do that. And then they decide towards the end of the year, we're going to run the ball a whole lot more. And then all of a sudden they get a lot better offensively. Last year, Lamar Jackson's hurt. The Ravens, he's sick. They have all the backfield injuries, so they do expand the passing game, but it's not as effective. It's not as efficient. But one of the things that I have been telling people all offseason that is a stat that blows their mind, just because mentally you think, Hollywood Brown, he forced his way out of Baltimore because he doesn't like the run-heavy offense. He was 9th in wide receiver targets last year. 9th. Look at the rest of the depth chart there. We know, Mark Andrews is the number 1, okay? He's the guy Lamar's always going to trust. But look at the rest of the wide receiver depth chart there. Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tylan Wallace. Sammy Watkins is gone. I
was going to say, Sammy Watkins.
No, yeah, he's not there. No, it's a bad – and I'm fine if people want to take a shot on one of those other receivers late in their best ball leagues. But there is a lot of opportunity here for Rashod Bateman. He's got 150 target upside, and he's being drafted as a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. And if you're doing best ball, it's actually relatively affordable to stack Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman. You can get them with back-to-back 5th, 6th round picks. It's been a strategy that I've been enjoying this year.
Oh, look, I love Bateman. Right now, he is wide receiver 27. I've taken advantage of that fact as often as I can on our mock draft shows and real life drafts, because I'm with you. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. And I feel like some people are held back with that because they say, Lamar's not a prolific passer and all these other nonsense. But I keep coming back to the same point.
They've never had somebody.
But they've never to somebody. But I also think Bateman has a lot more upside than anybody else they've surrounded him with at that position ever. Not even in a long time, just ever. All right, let's go back to you, D-Bro. Who's too low for the D-Bro?
I'm going to go back to the Giants offense here for a second. I think that people are sleeping on Kadarius Toney's upside. I have him at wide receiver 37. We saw him. I know it was a small stretch, but he balled out when he was on the field last year. He was 12th in yards per route run against man coverage, 11th overall in this metric. And I've mentioned this on the show, but it bears repeating here. For anybody new or you just getting back into redraft, come with me on this journey. 5 wide receivers last year, 29% or higher target per route run rate, and 2.2 or higher yards per route run. This is the list. Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Antonio Brown, and yes, Kadarius Toney. The talent is real. The upside is real. This Giants offense is going to be better. Buy into Kadarius Toney.
All right. Kadarius Toney makes that list. Again, he is wide receiver 48. So if he does reach Debro's standard where he thinks he might, that's a huge value potentially. Let's go to Joe Dolan for another name that you think is too low on the list of guys ranked right now.
You know, I actually did not realize what a heated debate this was, because I did the Fantasy Feast podcast with Ross Tucker, and we were going through just like 4th through 10th round ADPs. And I mentioned one of the guys who was carrying a 4th round ADP. We were using DraftKings at that time, but just to throw it out there, who I said, not a 4th round pick for a whole lot longer. And I said, everybody's in on him, Gabriel Davis. And I found out this week, based on all the heated discussions on Twitter, that there are people who are very anti Gabriel Davis. And I am not one of them. I am somebody who, I understand he is being priced what theoretically is near his ceiling, gives him a very low kind of margin of error here. But we're talking about the most prolific passing offense in the NFL with arguably the best quarterback. There are tons of vacated targets now with Emmanuel Sanders gone, with Cole Beasley gone. He's not going to go for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in every game. It's not going to happen. Okay. Like, I understand that being that outlier a game probably is fueling both ends of this discussion. Like, right.
You're right. I think you're right.
Look what he can do. But oh God,
you can't count on that either.
Yeah.
You see, I'm old enough. Last year, I was pro Gabriel Davis before it was cool and trendy to be pro Gabriel Davis. Debro knows this. And I got let down. And then you saw glimpses of it towards the latter part of the season, and then certainly in the playoffs. So right now he is at wide receiver. Let me pull the 33. Where would you put Gabriel Davis?
We have him at wide receiver 20. And look,
that's very aggressive.
Wide receiver 33, I think, is way below where like a lot of best ball players are drafting him, because they see the upside here with Gabriel Davis. But here's the other thing I would say. He didn't get the opportunity in the first half, or even maybe the first 3 quarters of the season. Like, there were games where he was playing under 30% of the snaps, and then down the stretch, 83, 90, 87, 91, 71, 83. Those were all the highest. The last 6 games that he played were the only 6 games of the season in which he averaged over 70% of the snaps. Those were the only 6 games, and that's when he produced. And I understand, look, the 4 touchdowns, but this is a talented player. I think they brought in Emmanuel Sanders last year because the Bills were like, all right, we like Gabe Davis, but he's a second-year player. We think we're a Super Bowl contender. Let's get a veteran receiver in here and see what he can do.
Well, didn't they do the same thing with Crowder this year, though? Now, I mean,
but Crowder's more of a Cole Beasley replacement. Who, by the way, hey,
True.
if you want to tell me that Jamison Crowder's a good value in the 12th, 13th round, I'm not going to argue with you there either. But this is going to sound hyperbolic, and it probably is. I don't want to miss on the year where T.O. outscores Jerry Rice when they're on the same team. Like the 3rd round young receiver who has ability, who's playing with the established superstar, but he's a bigger guy, and he's the guy who takes the next step. Look, Terrell Owens is a Hall of Famer, but I'm just saying, like, there is plenty of opportunity here for Gabriel Davis to explode in the NFL's most prolific passing offense. I know there's arguments on both sides here.
Sure.
A lot of them are valued, but I'm in on Gabe Davis.
I can't wait for everybody to take your metaphor super seriously on the YouTube comments. Oh, I can't believe he thinks he's T.O. He thinks Stephon Diggs is Jerry Rice. No, because you know they're going to. I can't wait for it. Drop them all in there. Go all the YouTube comments.
Please don't clip that for social. My mentions will be absolutely on fire.
But Joe, you're making a very solid, smart metaphor.
I like it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But the literal taking, as you know, people will do. I can't wait for it. I'm here for it. I can't wait to see it. All right, let's go to Derek Brown. Give me another player on your list who's ranked too low, in your opinion.
Just want to say this is a pro Gabe Davis show. Just got to say
Very
that.
pro Gabe.
The other player that I'm going to be pro.
It's basically a love letter to Saquon Barkley so far, but continue.
hey, we're all about love letters at this part of the show. And the one that I got to sit here and pin one for is Travis Etienne. I have him above consensus. I have him at RB16. I think that there's ceiling, obviously, for him to be even higher this year. I've talked about it on social. I think he's this year's DeAndre Swift. I understand the overall offensive complexion might not be great, and I'm not saying to go invest in other parts of the Jacksonville offense. But Travis Etienne, we're sleeping on how high his upside is, just based off of pass game involvement. I don't think we're going to see a healthy version of James Robinson this year. And for people that have forgotten, he was a crazy talented, electric prospect coming out of Clemson. Final 2 seasons, 1st and 20th in yards after contact per attempt, 4th and 15th in yards per route run. He can destroy this year. And the fact that he's going in the 4th round, maybe in your home leagues, he drops to the 5th round. At that point, absolutely. Crush wide receivers early and draft Etienne as your hero RB, your RB2, and just love
Travis Etienne is one of the reasons I feel so comfortable drafting 2 wide receivers down below at the turn, because he's always there when it comes back to me in the 3rd or 4th round, basically. He is RB23. I mean, chances are he's going to be there. Now, maybe we hype him too much. Maybe he starts to get away a little bit, but RB23 sounds like a fantastic value. And this is somebody I was on a lot last year, and I'm going right back into the well. And I know you are too, D-Bro, because like you said, you saw in college what he could do. And I think that anything resembling a professional game plan, anything alternate from what you saw last year from the Urban Meyer-led Jaguars is going to be an improvement. Even Doug Peterson is an improvement. All right, let's go to another one of your players, Joe Dolan. This is another one of my favorite guys. Go for it.
Oh, okay. D-Bro, do you know who I'm about to say?
I haven't looked at the outline here. I'm waiting. Good. Yes, I love this. Love this take.
Because I wanted to throw a guessing game out there, but let me just do a hypothetical for the listeners. What if I were to tell you there was a wide receiver who in PPR finished as the overall wide receiver 10 in scoring last year? They got a better coach, they have the same quarterback, and the offense got better this offseason. And I were to tell you that wide receiver is consistently available 35, 36, 40 wide receivers into a draft. What if I were to tell you that this wide receiver is in his 20s and just signed a multi-year extension? His name is Hunter Renfrow. And he's also, look, again, I understand why he has fallen. Well, Davante Adams is Derek Carr's boy, and Davante Adams is going to suck up a whole bunch of targets. Okay, understood. But Josh McDaniels, man, he's coming from the Patriots offense. And look, I understand. Like it's honestly so it's hilarious to the point of parody that you have this 100-catch white wide receiver who's now in a Josh McDaniels offense, which has made 100-catch white wide receivers incredibly productive. But even forget about that. Forget about that. With Mac Jones last year, Jacoby Myers caught 88 passes out of the slot. Hunter Renfrow's a better player than Jacoby Myers. At this point, Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Mac Jones. The Raiders were the 8th pass-heaviest team in the NFL last year. They completely rebuilt this run game. They have 6 running backs on that roster right now. I have no clue what to do with. Their offensive line, their running blocking is atrocious. They're going to throw the ball a ton. Hunter Renfrow produced at like a 3rd-round level last year, and he is consistently going in the 8th and 9th round of drafts. I would take Hunter Renfrow on every single one of my fantasy teams right now. And look, the beauty is he can lose like 2 fantasy points per game and still blow away his ADP.
You're right. And right now that's wide receiver 37 for those of you who are wondering. I'm glad somebody else finally said it besides me, Joe. It's nice for the audience to hear something, some other Joe talk about Hunter Renfrow and the value.
It's the
because it's the lazy compensation of, well, Davante Adams is there, so therefore Hunter Renfrow can't be good again. To which I say, then you know nothing about Josh McDaniels' offense, because Josh McDaniels' offense is absolutely going to run that guy out of the slot a million times and set up touchdowns. Yeah, that might be tricky, especially if Darren Waller's healthy too, because Adams and Waller are 2 guys who are just terrific in the red zone. But at the same time, Renfrow is still going to eat, and Carr only threw 23 touchdowns last year. So let's give him another 10, and those are all Davante Adams touchdowns. How about that? That's a very easy, simple math to do. Oh,
like,
come on.
Look, what did Belichick used to say? What was our passing offense? Moss over the top and Welker everything underneath. Now, Darren Waller does complicate those things. He does.
But Darren Waller's older, and Darren Waller's coming off an injured season. Darren Waller's not as young as everybody thinks he is.
Yeah,
I think that's a good reminder for
that's because he converted to tight end. So he's a young tight end, but he was an older player. But like, it just kind of feels like, I'm not comparing Renfrow to Cooper Kupp's season last year, because Cooper Kupp's season last year was ridiculous. But like, I was somebody who my heart was in the right place last year, but I was drafting Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp. Okay. And it just feels like ignoring a player who has the history of production and the history of chemistry that he has with his quarterback and Derek Carr. And we're watching week 1 and we're like, oh, Hunter Renfrow went 7 for 85. Should have seen that coming. I'm not missing on that.
And 7 for 85 in the full PPR, you'll take touchdown or not. So that's the other point, is that he doesn't need touchdowns in the full PPR to be a great player. All right, D-Bro, give me the last name on your list that you think is ranked too low.
I love Dolan's call out. When you could draft a wide receiver that can not only score you fantasy points, but handle your IT queries as well, it's a masterstroke. So
good.
The last player I got to bring up here, and I get that we talking about just congested kind of target trees here. The talent screams that he can earn targets in what we think is going to be a massively improved offense this year. Albert Okwuegbunam is a screaming buy. The fact that he is being ranked as the tight end 22 is beyond me. Inside of what we think can be a high-flying offense this year, and a player that has ranked 5th in yards per route run. Let me repeat that. 5th. He has maximized his opportunities. He is screaming, give me more targets, and they could be coming in 2022. Every efficiency metric just screams to buy this player right now. At the dip, he was 7th and 4th in yak per reception. He was 3rd and 1st in target per run rate. I will happily invest in Albert Okwuegbunam in all the last picks of my draft, because I think the upside is definitely there.
Is there enough upside considering how many talented wide receivers there are? Is that what's holding people back with this current ranking, in your opinion?
I think it is. I think that people are trying to decide there. The spotlight is on the debate of, is it Courtland Sutton? Is it Jerry Jeudy? Who are we going to buy in? And if we're buying into both, then Albert O can't eat, can he?
Well, and then there's Hamler and Tim Patrick too. Yep. There's a lot of other guys.
Absolutely.
Like people look at, everybody loves all the wide receivers.
It's also the Tim Patrick hype. I think that's probably the biggest culprit pushing Albert O down the draft boards.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. Let's go to your last guy on your list, Joe. Go ahead.
One of the things that's just to really throw it in there, that has confused a lot of people, including me, is the draft pick of Greg Dulcich. That one was like that 3rd round pick on the tight end. Ooh, that one with the new regime, new head coach in there. That one gave me a little bit of the willies, but I overall agree with the point on Albert O. The last one is actually going to be a counter to something I said earlier. My single most drafted wide receiver thus far is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He got more money than JuJu Smith-Schuster in free agency. The Chiefs had a really uncommonly restricted offense for them last year. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is cheaper than JuJu Smith-Schuster, significantly so. In drafts, he's cheaper than Sky Moore in drafts. Give me MVS, man. I am filtering this through the lens of best ball right now, and I think he's probably one of those players who you'd much rather have on a best ball team than a redraft team. But give me MVS. I'll take him with Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's easy to stack Patrick Mahomes this year, and MVS is a great guy to do that with.
MVS is at 55 and Sky Moore is at wide receiver 59 currently in the ECR. And it's funny because now my memory's been jogged here. It's been a long couple days readjusting after taking vacation, something that clearly I should not do ever again. But I will say this, D-Bro, when we did that draft, now that I'm remembering, we did a draft together. I don't consider that the same as this. This is the sit down where we really talk to each other. But in that draft, you recall, I took both of those guys. Yep. Because I said, hey, maybe I'm right about one, maybe I'm right about both, but I definitely think one of those dudes is going to be right. Joe Dolan, is that a valid approach when you get that late into a draft? If, Sky Moore is the trendier guy, even though ECR is not showing that right now, would you then take MVS around later after he was still around?
Oh, yeah. And I did do an interview with Seth Kaiser, and he said, don't forget about Mecole Hardman. And I really want to forget about Mecole Hardman.
I did. I forgot about Mecole Hardman.
I really want to. But MVS is my favorite wide receiver to draft. He might be Renfrow and MVS might be my two favorite receivers to draft, like bar none.
I got to tell you, Joe, Bateman, Davis, Renfrow, and Sky Moore, MVS, somebody else on the Chiefs. Those are four guys that people watching these shows, listening to the shows here, they know. Those are Joe guys. I know some of them are D-Bro guys as well. So we're all in agreement there. So that's a great list. Again, real quick, I'm going to recap the guys too high, too low. These are the guys that the boys thought were too high. David Montgomery, Amari Cooper, Aaron Jones, Pat Freiermuth, Robert Woods. Those were D-Bros. Joe Dolan's were JuJu, Nick Chubb, Damien Harris, Antonio Gibson, Michael Thomas. The guys that they thought were too low, D-Bro had Russell Gage, Saquon, Kadarius Toney, Travis Etienne, Alberto. Joe had Saquon as well, Rashod Bateman, Gabe Davis, Hunter Renfrow, MVS, and Sky Moore. So those are good debates. And again, if you want to see where these guys are ranked and where some of us have them ranked, go over to fantasypros.com/rankings and check that out. Let's do a quick mailbag question here. We got one from Luke that I thought was very worthy. I know we're running out of time. Luke wants to know, in a dynasty league, how do you value future draft picks? Is a 2024 first rounder the same as a 2023 first? Are they discounted the further out you go? Thanks and God bless. And that's from @LukeFFBall. How do you approach this, D-Bro, in dynasty leagues? Are you somebody that's willing, the further out, the further away those draft picks are, the more willing you are to move first rounders to try to win now?
Yes, absolutely. I'll move 24 picks. If you're in a league where you got 25 picks, 2025 picks, I would move those. Because here's the thing, we're so far away from that. If you change your perspective on what that draft class looks like, you have plenty enough time to trade players and get back into that draft if you want those rookies. At this point, I'll move those picks for either underrated assets in Dynasty or players that I'm like, I'm going all in, baby. Let's win now. Let's crush. And if I swing and miss at that, then I still have 23 picks to sit here and fall back on.
And Joe, I mean, just because we think a draft class is going to be good, I know everybody thought there were going to be some quarterbacks this year that were going to be good, and some of them lost their jobs and ended up transferring to other schools, as I recall. So you can't always bank that you think a draft class next year is going to be really good or 2 years from now necessarily, because injuries happen, bad performance happens. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I'm going to tell you, this is how the NFL sees it. If, for instance, if I were sitting, let's just say I was an NFL team and there's a player available at number 35 overall, that NFL team wants, which is an early second round pick, and they don't want to give up any same year picks, they would have to trade a first round pick for that pick. So it's just so a first rounder is worth a second rounder, like a second rounder this year is worth a first rounder next year. That's how I view it for Dynasty for sure. The farther it goes down the line, the less value I place on that pick. Yeah. Look, I play Dynasty in 2 to 3 year windows. I'm not smart enough to project it beyond that. I'm not.
But I don't think it's. I think it's unreasonable to do more than 3 year window because too much changes. I mean, look, let's harken back to the 3 year window ago of what Michael Thomas's value was, and we talked about that on the show and what it is now. JuJu 3 year windows can be huge swings in value. Absolutely.
JuJu was coming off of his sophomore year. You might legitimately have been in drafts where JuJu was drafted in the first or second pick, depending on what dynasty draft you were in. It happens, man.
I'm old enough.
There we go.
I'm old enough to remember when Jameis Winston and Mike Evans were both wide receiver 1 and QB 1 in Dynasty. Just saying.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Oh, Mike Evans. Mike Evans was pretty good payoff for that, but not so much Jameis.
Yeah, Mike Evans was pretty good. All right. Again, you can follow him on the Twitter machine at FG_Dolan. Check out his work everywhere on SiriusXM Fantasy, also at Fantasy Points. One of my favorite people just in the industry and a great voice in it and a great dude also. And don't forget to check out fantasypros.com/kit. That's where the draft kit is. It is live. It is ready. It's there to help you dominate all your leagues. It's free. But again, I got the deal for you. I got a special deal. I know a guy. I'm telling you right now, you go to fantasypros.com/offers. You make a deposit for one of our partner sites. You place a wager. That's it. That's all you've got to do at fantasypros.com/offers. And when you do that, you get 12 free months access to our premium features, our premium content. That includes the upgraded draft wizard. That includes the upgraded draft kit. That includes my playbook to manage all your teams throughout the year. It is incredible the value we're giving you just for playing more fantasy football, just for going out there and making some bets on some fantasy football. Again, that's at fantasypros.com/offers, and the draft kit is available at fantasypros.com/kit. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Joe Dolan and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.